Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Patrick Bennett had always been a man of predictable routine. He woke up at 6 in the morning, made strong coffee, and left sweet little notes stuck to the fridge for his wife Diane before heading off to his job as an operations manager at a medical equipment distributor in Nashville, Tennessee. He was the kind of man who believed marriage was built on details, remembering to buy her favorite flowers for no reason, asking how her day went, planning simple dinners on weekends. To Patrick, those gestures were the foundation of something solid and lasting. They'd been married for 12 years, living in a quiet suburb in a 2-story house with a well-kept garden where neighbors greeted each other and kids played in the street without fear. Diane worked as a graphic designer in a hybrid role for an advertising agency downtown, alternating days at the office and at home. In the early years of their marriage, she used to share lively stories about her projects and creative campaigns. Patrick listened with genuine interest, asked questions, and cared. That's how they worked. She brought creative energy, and he brought stability. On the surface, they seemed like a perfect balance. But in the past 6 months, something had changed. Patrick began noticing small signs that, on their own, might have seemed insignificant, but together formed a troubling pattern. Diane started dressing up more on her office days. It wasn't just a nice blouse or a bit of extra makeup, it was an almost ritualistic level of care. Expensive perfume he didn't recognize, heels she rarely wore, hair styled elaborately. When he complimented her, she'd look away and mumble something about important meetings or client presentations. But the explanation never sounded convincing. Diane's phone also became an impenetrable mystery. Before, she'd leave it lying around the house, sometimes even forgetting to charge it. Now, she kept it glued to her side, always screen down, and whenever it rang, she'd step into another room to answer. Patrick tried not to seem paranoid. He tried to trust. But suspicion grew like a stubborn weed, quiet and persistent. Their conversations changed drastically too. When he asked about work, Diane answered in short, almost automatic phrases. It was fine. Nothing much. Just meetings. She no longer told stories, didn't share frustrations or successes. It was as if part of her had shut down, as if she were physically present but emotionally distant, occupying a space Patrick wasn't allowed to enter. At night, in bed, the distance became even more obvious. Diane always had an excuse: she was tired, had a headache, needed to wake up early. Patrick never pushed, but he felt the emptiness between them growing. He tried talking a few times, choosing moments he thought were appropriate. "Diane, I feel like we're drifting apart. Did something happen? Is there something you want to tell me?" She always dodged it, insisting he was overreacting, that it was just work stress, tight deadlines, client pressure. "You're seeing problems where there aren't any, Patrick. Just relax." But Patrick couldn't relax. His gut screamed that something was wrong, even without concrete proof. He started paying attention to details he'd once ignored. The overtime that had become far too frequent. The messages she typed in a hurry and deleted before he could see the screen. The way she avoided eye contact when she lied about where she'd been. All of it added up, forming a picture he didn't want to admit, but that grew clearer by the day. It was an ordinary Tuesday when everything started to fall apart. Patrick had an important afternoon meeting scheduled with suppliers for a clinic in Memphis, but the client canceled last minute due to an emergency and rescheduled for the following week. Patrick was already on his way to the office when he got the email. He checked his watch. It wasn't even 2 p.m. normally. He'd returned to the office and used the free time to catch up on reports. But that day, a different thought crossed his mind, a simple, spontaneous idea. Why not drop by Diane's office and surprise her? He'd always liked gestures like that. He believed small surprises kept romance alive. He decided to stop at a cafe on the way and pick up Diane's favorite iced coffee, the one with caramel she loved. He also grabbed a brownie because he knew she couldn't resist it. As he drove through Nashville toward downtown, Patrick felt a mix of anxiety and hope. Maybe this gesture would thaw some of the coldness that had settled between them. But the closer he got to her office, the more his anxiety grew. Something inside him, a quiet but insistent voice, suggested this surprise might not be as welcome as he imagined. He tried to ignore it. He parked in front of the building where Diane's agency was located, grabbed the coffee and brownie, and walked in. The receptionist greeted him with a polite smile. Patrick said he was there to see Diane Bennett from the design department. The receptionist frowned, checked something on her computer, and said, "Diane isn't here today. It's her remote work day." Patrick felt the floor drop out from under him. "Remote work," he repeated, trying to process the information. "Are you sure?" The receptionist confirmed it, showing him on screen that Diane was marked as absent, working remotely. Patrick thanked her with a stiff nod, turned, and walked out of the building on autopilot. The iced coffee felt warm in his hand, but he barely noticed. His mind spun in circles. If Diane wasn't at the office, where was she? She'd left the house that morning fully dressed, with perfect makeup and that expensive perfume. She'd explicitly said she had back-to-back meetings all day. Why would she lie? Sitting in the car, Patrick took a deep breath. The pieces were starting to fit together in a disturbing way. The elaborate outfits, the perfume, the hidden phone, the unexplained overtime, it was all beginning to make sense in a way he didn't want to accept. But Patrick wasn't the type to wait weeks or months, slowly gathering proof. He was impulsive when the truth was at stake. If something was wrong, he needed to know immediately. He wasn't going to live another day in doubt. He grabbed his phone and quickly Googled, "Private Investigator Nashville." Several results popped up. He called the first one on the list, a firm with good reviews. He explained the situation directly, without beating around the bush. "I need to know where my wife is right now. She said she was somewhere, but she's not there. I need answers today." On the other end, the investigator, a man with a deep, professional voice, said he could help. He asked for basic info, Diane's full name, her car's make and license plate, and her home and work addresses. Patrick provided everything quickly. The investigator promised to start right away and have an answer within a few hours. Patrick hung up and sat there in the parking lot, holding the coffee that no longer made sense to deliver. He tossed the drink and brownie into the trash next to his car. He felt a mix of anger, sadness, and strange clarity. Part of him still hoped he was wrong, that there was an innocent explanation. But the rational part, the part he trusted at work, already knew the truth. He knew he was about to confirm something that would change everything. 3 hours later, the phone rang. It was the investigator. Patrick answered on the first ring, his heart racing. "Mr. Bennett, I've located your wife's vehicle. She's parked at a residential complex in West Nashville. I've sent you the exact location by text. And there's more, I've identified the apartment. It's registered under a Julian Graves. I ran a quick search, he's the creative director at the same agency where your wife works." Patrick closed his eyes. The confirmation hit him like a punch to the gut. There was no more doubt. No room left for illusions. Diane was cheating on him. And not with a stranger, with someone from work, someone she spent hours with every day, someone who probably heard the same stories Patrick used to hear years ago. "Sir, would you like me to keep monitoring?" the investigator asked. Patrick took a deep breath and replied firmly, "No. I want you to go there now and document everything, photos, videos, whatever you can get. And prepare a full report. I need it by the end of today." The investigator confirmed and hung up. Patrick sat in the car, motionless, for several minutes. His hands trembled slightly on the wheel. Anger began to rise, mixed with a deep pain he didn't yet know how to process. But there was no time to fall apart. He needed to act. He picked up his phone and called the lawyer who'd handled their home purchase years ago, a trustworthy man named Robert Caldwell. He explained the situation quickly, sticking to facts without excess emotion. Robert listened in silence and, at the end, said, "Patrick, I'm truly sorry. I'll prepare the divorce papers immediately. With the evidence you're gathering, the process will be clean. Send me the investigator's report as soon as you have it." Patrick thanked him and hung up. Now it was just a matter of time. He wasn't going to wait days to confront Diane. He wasn't going to give her time to make excuses or downplay what she'd done. He was going to end it that very day, directly, clearly, and definitively. At 6 p.m., the investigator sent everything by email. Photos of Diane entering the building with Julian, the two of them laughing, standing too close. Images of her car parked in the same spot for hours. A detailed report with timestamps and past dates the investigator had pulled from the complex's security cameras. It was all there, documented, undeniable. Patrick printed everything at a nearby print shop, placed it in a black folder, and drove straight to the complex. He parked a few feet from the building where Diane and Julian were. He looked at the black folder on the passenger seat, took a deep breath, and got out. There was no nervousness, only cold determination. He walked to the entrance with firm steps. The doorman raised his hand to ask for ID, but Patrick got ahead of him. "I'm here to visit apartment 304. Julian Graves. He's expecting me." He spoke with such confidence that the doorman let him in. The elevator rose slowly. 3rd floor. Patrick walked down the hallway until he found door 304. He stood in front of it for a few seconds, listening. Silence. Then, without hesitation, he knocked 3 times, firm and loud. From inside, he heard muffled voices, quick movement, someone approaching. The lock turned. The door opened. And there she was. Diane, her face still flushed, hair slightly messy, wearing a blouse he didn't recognize. Her eyes widened when she saw him. All color drained from her face in seconds. She stood frozen in the doorway, unable to speak, as if her brain had short-circuited trying to process the impossibility of the scene. Patrick said nothing. He simply held up the black folder and handed it to her. Diane took it instinctively, looking at her husband with panicked eyes. "Patrick, what are you doing here? How did you?" Her voice came out trembling, almost inaudible. He didn't answer. He turned his head slightly and saw Julian appear behind Diane, hastily buttoning his shirt, his face pale too. Patrick looked at them both and finally spoke, his voice calm and sharp. "Open the folder, Diane." She stared at it like it was a bomb about to explode. With trembling fingers, she opened it. The first thing she saw were the photos, her and Julian entering the building together, her laughing at something he'd said, the two of them in the parking lot standing too close. Images from different dates, all documented. There was also the investigator's report, detailing every meeting, every lie. "Patrick, I can explain," Diane started, but he raised his hand, cutting her off mid-sentence. "No. You can't. There's no explanation for this. You lied. You looked me in the eye and lied. You made me look like a fool for months. And worse, you did it with someone I never disrespected." Julian tried to step in, taking a step forward. "Look, Patrick, we need to talk like adults. It's not as simple as it seems." Patrick turned his gaze to him, and the intensity in that look made Julian step back. "You don't talk to me. You don't exist to me. You're just another coward who thought he could take what wasn't his without consequences." Diane started crying, tears streaming down her face as she still held the folder. "Patrick, please. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. But we can talk about this, we can try to fix it." Patrick let out a short, bitter laugh. "Fix it? Diane, do you really think betrayal can be fixed? Do you think I'm going to go home, pretend nothing happened, and keep living like you didn't destroy everything? He then reached into his coat pocket and pulled out another envelope, this one white and official, bearing the law firm's logo. He held it out to Diane. She looked at it without taking it. "Take it," Patrick said firmly. Diane took it with her free hand, still holding the folder. She opened it slowly and saw the divorce papers, already filled out, already signed by Patrick, waiting only for her signature. "Do you have a lawyer?" Patrick asked. Diane shook her head, wordless. "Then I suggest you get one. Fast. Because this isn't negotiable." Julian, trying to regain some composure, took another step forward. "Patrick, you can't just show up here and what? Expose the truth? Because that's exactly what I'm doing. You two thought you could do this behind my back without anyone finding out. But you were found out. And now you'll deal with it." Diane sobbed, trying to speak through her tears. "Patrick, I still love you. I know it sounds impossible, but I still love you. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. It was a choice. You chose this. You chose to lie. You chose to leave the house all dressed up to come here. You chose every text, every meeting, every lie. Don't try to turn it into something else. You made choices. Now live with them." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Julian looked away. Patrick took a step back, looking at them both one last time. "You two deserve each other. And Julian, just so you know, when you get tired of her, and you will, she'll do the exact same thing with someone else. Because people who cheat once always cheat again." He turned and walked toward the elevator. Diane stepped out of the apartment, trying to catch up. "Patrick, wait. Don't leave like this. We've had 12 years together. It can't end like this." Patrick stopped, turned one last time, and said with devastating calmness, "Diane, it ended the day you decided to cheat. I'm just making it official." The elevator doors closed, and Patrick rode down, leaving behind everything he'd once believed was his future. Patrick left the building with firm steps, got into his car, and sat there with his hands on the wheel, staring into nothing. His breathing was heavy, his heart racing, but there were no tears. Not yet. What he felt was a mix of anger, relief, and a deep emptiness. He started the car and drove back home. The whole way, his mind was blank, as if his brain had temporarily shut down to protect itself. When he got home, everything looked the same but felt completely different. The photos on the wall, the furniture they'd chosen together, the decor Diane had insisted on, everything now carried a different weight. Patrick went straight upstairs to the bedroom, pulled large suitcases from the closet, and started packing Diane's clothes. Every piece he folded was a step toward closure. He spent the whole night doing it. By the time he finished, it was past 3 in the morning. The next morning, he woke up early. He changed the locks on all the doors. He hired a locksmith who arrived before 9, and within an hour, everything was done. Diane would no longer be able to get in. Patrick also changed the Wi-Fi password, cancelled her supplementary credit card, and blocked her number. He wanted no contact. He didn't want to hear apologies or pleas. The following days were a blur of practical decisions. Patrick handed all documentation to his lawyer, who immediately started the divorce process. Since there were no children and the house was solely in his name, the process would be straightforward. During those days, Diane tried contacting him repeatedly, calls, texts, emails. Patrick blocked everything. She reached out through mutual friends. He refused every attempt. He instructed his lawyer, all communication would go through legal representatives only. 3 days after the confrontation, Diane showed up at the house. Patrick saw her through the security camera. She stood in the front yard, looking at the door. She rang the bell repeatedly. Patrick didn't answer. She tried her old key, but it didn't work. She knocked on the door, called his name, begged. "Patrick, please. I just want to talk." He stood on the other side in silence. After nearly 10 minutes, Diane gave up and left, crying. A week later, the lawyer called to say Diane had hired legal representation and was reviewing the papers. She wasn't contesting anything. Patrick felt relieved at the news. It meant she understood there was no going back. While the legal process moved forward, Patrick began reorganizing his life. He went back to the gym, picked up old hobbies, and threw himself into work, taking on bigger projects and traveling more. Exactly 21 days after the confrontation, Patrick was at home when his phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from an unknown number. He opened it. "Can we talk?" He recognized it immediately. It was Diane. She'd gotten a new number. Patrick stared at the message for a few seconds, feeling anger rise again. He wasn't falling for it. He wasn't giving her the satisfaction of a reply. But then he had a better idea, a response that would make it absolutely clear, once and for all, that there was no room for conversation or reconciliation. He picked up the phone and called his lawyer. The next day, a process server rang the doorbell at the house where Diane was temporarily staying, at her sister's place. Diane answered, confused, and accepted an official envelope. She signed for it and opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a copy of the finalized divorce papers, now notarized and legally recognized, with Patrick's authenticated signature. Attached was a short, typed letter, completely devoid of emotion. "Diane, I received your message asking to talk. Conversations are for people who still have something to build together. Between us, only what must be undone remains. You made your choices. I made mine. There's nothing more to say. The papers are finalized. Sign them and move on. I already have. Patrick." Diane read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. She sat on the floor, hugging her knees, feeling the final weight of her loss. There was no going back. Patrick had made that perfectly clear. The following weeks brought formal closure. Diane signed the papers without contesting, and the divorce was officially finalized in less than 2 months. Patrick sold the house and bought a smaller apartment in another part of Nashville, a place with no history. He dedicated himself to work and accepted a promotion that required more travel. Work became his refuge. While Patrick rebuilt his life with discipline, Diane faced devastating consequences. Julian ended things 2 weeks after the confrontation, saying the affair had been a mistake and was never serious. Diane moved back in with her sister. At work, the affair with Julian had become public knowledge. Colleagues treated her coldly. 2 months later, her contract wasn't renewed. She was unemployed. She tried applying elsewhere, but the story had spread. Her reputation was tarnished. She sold her car to pay off debts. 6 months after the divorce, on a chilly autumn afternoon, fate arranged an unexpected meeting. Patrick was at a grocery store near his new apartment, doing his usual shopping. He was pushing his cart down an aisle when he suddenly saw her. Diane stood in front of a shelf, staring at products without really seeing them. She wore simple clothes, no makeup, her hair pulled back haphazardly. She carried a small basket with just a few items. Patrick stopped mid-aisle. His heart quickened for a brief moment, but it wasn't pain anymore, just the shock of the unexpected. Diane hadn't seen him yet. He could easily turn his cart and leave. But something made him stay. Then Diane turned her head, and their eyes met. She froze. Her eyes widened. For a few seconds, neither moved. Slowly, Diane took a few hesitant steps toward him. "Patrick," her voice came out low, almost a whisper. He just nodded, saying nothing. The silence between them was thick. Diane tried to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. You look good." Patrick kept his expression neutral. "I am. And you?" Diane looked away, down at her basket. "Just surviving," she said with painful honesty. Patrick didn't know what to say. "I hope you're okay, Diane." "Truly." She looked at him, eyes welling up. "Patrick, I know you don't want to hear this, but I'm so sorry. Every day, I'm sorry. I destroyed everything. I know that." He nodded slightly. "I know you are. But that doesn't change anything." Diane bit her lip, holding back tears. I just wanted you to know you were never the problem. The problem was always me." Patrick was silent for a few seconds. "I know that too, Diane. I always did." He took a step back, gripping his cart. "Take care of yourself." He turned the cart and started walking away. Diane stood there, watching him leave, tears finally streaming down her face. She didn't try to follow him. She didn't call his name. She just stood there alone in the grocery aisle, holding a nearly empty basket, feeling the weight of every choice that had brought her to that moment. Patrick finished his shopping, checked out, and left. He loaded the bags into his car, got in, and sat there for a few minutes, processing the encounter. He felt no anger, no sadness, just confirmation that he'd made the right choice. Diane had lost everything, not because he'd punished her, but because the consequences of her own actions had finally caught up with her. And he, despite the pain, had managed to get back on his feet and rebuild a life where his dignity remained intact. He started the car and drove out of the parking lot, leaving behind not just the grocery store but the last remnant of a chapter that was finally closed. Life went on. And Patrick was ready for whatever came next. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.